Hello, it's a pleasure to have you here this morning. I'm Bernice Abubeidu-Lansa, and this is News Desk. Coming up, a colonel and 3 police officers have been removed from the National Security Ministry over assault on Citi FM journalists. We've got details plus a reaction from security analyst and expert Dr. Enin, and also we'll hear from Sampson on what this means to press freedom. Also, lab technicians at the Profanie Teaching Hospital continue their strike. We are live on the ground to assess the impact on patients. We've got these and more, plus business and sports in this edition of News Desk. Please stay with us. I'm grateful that you could make time to join us this morning. We are coming to you live from our studios in Kokomlemle, Accra, also live on DSTV channel 421, Gold TV channel 144, around the world at myjoyonline.com. The details, we start with that story stemming from a statement from the National Security on a colonel and 3 police officers being removed from the ministry over the assault on a Citi FM journalist, Kudah. Let me bring you details of that statement, which is signed by the Minister for National Security. Now it's captioned, "Action on the committee report on the arrest of the Citi FM journalist at the Ministry of National Security. An investigation committee was set up by the Ministry of National Security to investigate a report of the arrest of Mr. Kudah of Citi FM on May 11, 2021. The committee established that the conduct of Lieutenant Colonel Frank Agyemang, who is Director of Operations, and some police officers at the ministry on the said day was inappropriate and contravened the ministry's standard operating procedures. The committee also established that the journalist's unauthorized entry into the premises of the Ministry of National Security was unlawful." The following actions have thus been taken by the ministry. The first is the secondment of Lieutenant Colonel Frank Agyemang as the ministry has been reversed. The officer is to report to the Chief of Defence Staff for further investigation and appropriate action. Now, the 3 police officers involved have been withdrawn and are to report to the Ghana Police Service for investigation and disciplinary action. The following actions have thus been taken. There's a third one. The Ministry of National Security wishes to assure the general public and particularly all media practitioners that the ministry will expeditiously investigate any complaints against any personnel of its agencies. The tenets of national security in Ghana should be based on a whole of government and a whole of society approach and cooperation from all well-meaning Ghanaians. And the ministry assures the general public that measures continue to be taken to ensure the highest professional standards to engender public trust. Now, for a conversation on this, we've been joined by security expert Professor Enin and legal practitioner Sampson. Let me come to you first, Prof. Enin. Your initial reaction to the statement?
Well, I think this is very welcome development in terms of the public outcry about the behavior of the national security operatives and the treatment of young Mr. Caleb. However, the statement also opens up lots of other critical issues that we need to discuss and to bring onto the fore. One of them relates to standard operating procedures. How should operatives or those who work under the national security framework actually treat people? How should they go about their work? 2, how are they supervised? 3, how are they mentored? 4, recruitment, training, and equally importantly is the role of Parliament as an oversight institution. So this is a very tentative first step. It's very welcome, but 95% more work is actually ahead of us. And I'm hoping that by issuing this statement, that it signifies and symbolizes an openness and a preparedness for engagement for a discussion, for roping in a wider group of individuals with different perspectives. But secondly, if the police officers, the three police officers, and Kendall Ajiman have flouted the law, then I don't think they should be sent to their parent institutions. Because they realize the controversy that I've been talking about all of last week and this week, that the nature of the structure, what they now call apparatus under Act 3010, if the apparatus of national security draws on different institutions and their personnel for them to act, then when they flout the rules of Ghana, then they must be punished under that act. You see, because by sending them to their parent institutions, we are not too sure what types of punishment will be meted out to them. So as I've said earlier on, this is the beginning of what is going to be a very long, conversation. I'm hoping it will be driven by openness, by trust, by transparency, and a genuine desire to ensure that we have a national institution that works to secure the generality of the Ghanaian population.
Prof, give us a clear understanding of what this means within the security space. Have these people, is it proper to say they have been demoted?
Oh no, dear, no. And they realize the earlier point I am making. Under what rules and regulations are they going to be punished? Because if you remember, Azugu specifically in terms of the government white paper had been recommended that he goes back to his parent institution. Now, for more than a year or so, he has not moved. Now, that is a flouting of a direct, order by his superior bosses. So that what is happening is that somewhere within the structure, there are people who think they are above the law and are not acting appropriately, even when instructions have been given. So yes, here we have a specific case where the chief of the defense staff has been mentioned as taking the initial disciplinary steps. But what about the police officers? There is nothing indicative in this statement. But I'm hoping that this is a learning process also for the Ministry of National Security. That as we continue to engage and to make suggestions, that they will be open-minded enough, to take on board all the new ideas that are coming. We cannot have one set of laws for the military and another set for the police. There must be a standard unified law that says, if in performing your responsibilities and duties to the state of Ghana, and by extension, its citizens, you flout the standard operating procedure, that is, if they exist, then you will be punished according to those procedures. So this is a work in progress. There's a lot of work ahead of us in the coming weeks and months.
All right, Prof, I'll come back to you shortly. Let me speak to lawyer Sampson Enin, who's been on many platforms talking about this incident as narrated by the Citi FM journalist Caleb Kudah. Sampson, so Caleb narrated what he clearly described as an assault to us. In this statement, we see no mention of that and whether and we have not been given details on the facts of that matter as established by the committee's report. Would it have been proper for us to know those details as well?
Very good observation. You certainly couldn't have missed this observation. But I must start on the note of acknowledging that what has happened is a good start. A good start with almost unprecedented swiftness in, reporting to the public, dealing with the matter and reporting to the public. I see what has happened, though, as a preliminary phase by the tenor of the report. That's how I see it, as a preliminary phase. And therefore, I have an expectation of a more substantive phase, which would see biting sanctions administratively from the parent, organizations that those people, the colonel whose secondment has been reversed, that's actually no punishment. And then the 3 police officers who have been withdrawn, also no punishment, because they will continue to draw their salary anyway. So this, for me, is the first phase, preliminary phase, and there ought to be the second and substantive phase, which will now result in real, true, administrative, punitive, biting sanctions. And like Prof. Enin has mentioned, there was criminal conduct, there was unconstitutional conduct, there was most egregious and unlawful conduct on the part of the officers. That is not dealt by administrative proceeding. It is dealt, if it is criminal, it is dealt in the court of law. So then it's like you clearly, unmistakably observed. You see, when it comes to Caleb and how he had access to the premises, they call it unlawful.
Yes.
The same person who is authoring this report, calling accessing a premises unlawful, is unable to call the torture of a journalist by people supposed to be professionals as criminal, as unconstitutional, and as unlawful, and to tell us the detail, like you said, the detail of how they went about assaulting the young man. How do they label it? Inappropriate. So they inappropriately label an unconstitutional and egregiously unlawful and criminal conduct as inappropriate. I agree when they use contravention of standard, procedure. That's one I agree. Except that the procedure they say is procedure that is relative to the ministry. I am not familiar with that procedure. I am generally familiar with the police procedure in effecting an arrest of someone who is suspected to have committed a crime. And let's not mince words about it. Caleb committed no crime. It must be stressed over and again. He committed no crime. In fact, he broke no journalistic code in what he had to do. Now, I believe that the second phase, which must be the most substantive phase, must see as being told of the details, the very minute details of the conduct. And I have asked already that if the ministry wants to keep its credibility, it wants to be seen as being credible, they can start by putting out the CCTV, which captures what was done to the young man. Now, they should, we too must not let things lie. If we take our eyes off the ball, I can assure you, and you are familiar with this country, that they will go back to their places and nothing will happen. After all, a whole eminent commission of inquiry made recommendations requiring the man who gave the instructions for these, unlawful things to be done to Caleb to be removed from that place And as we have learned, Azugu is still there. So we must follow it, ask and demand of the IGP and demand of the military high command that this is done and done swiftly, just as the National Security Ministry has done. But Bennett, for me, as I have mentioned before, what will be most substantive is not limiting this thing to Caleb, because there are too many Ghanaians who have suffered and continue to suffer this egregious, unconstitutional, unlawful, and criminal conduct and abuse by national security operatives, including the BNI. So let's go to the Constitution and make sure that we are setting up a presidential commission of inquiry under the terms in Chapter 23 of the Constitution, under those terms, which the commission will have the powers of a high court, and every Ghanaian who has had these, experiences, either with the national security or the BNI, and lawyers, some of us who have known and have encountered the abuses, will appear and give testimony, then they will make recommendations, and these recommendations must come with a caveat. Even before the commission is set up, just in 1 second, before the commission is set up, we should have a presidential undertaking that the report, the findings and recommendations will not be buried and will be implemented when submitted without any variation. That is the way to resolve the problem.
All right, Sampson. Yes, I'll
in the long term.
Yeah, I'll come back to you when we are wrapping up to talk about what this means for the whole fight for press freedom. But let me bring Prof. Enin in here. So Sampson just spoke about the recommendations that the Short Commission preferred after they heard that Ayawaso West Wogan case. And we can't help but bring that back because, like he mentioned, DSP Azugu is also at the center of this, and he was at the center of that particular incident. We've been following up on this, and clearly we've seen that those recommendations were not taken at all.
Well, I mean, the non-implementation of the recommendations of the Short Commission, plus the recommendations from the White Paper, sends a rather disturbing, signal that there are people who can act illegally and will not be punished by the law. And precisely because of this lacunae, but this is also a historical thing, less than 15 to 20% of the recommendations of commissions of inquiry and the recommendations of the white papers are actually ever implemented in Ghana. But particularly in cases where we are dealing with democratic transitions, then it is crucial that the recommendations of such commissions established by the state at taxpayers' expense, that the recommendations are implemented to the full, particularly when the abuses by state organizations have been captured on camera. They've gone around the whole world, and it has caused us massive reputational damage. Not only that, the recommendations and the presentations before the Short Commission also demonstrated the difficulties of having an uncontrolled institution, that is this SWAT team, in which relevant ministers dealing with security either did not know of their existence, their numbers, their logistics, their financing, and no one at all seemed to have direct supervisory control. And therefore, the recommendation that Azugu and co should go back to their parent institutions was critical to our democratic dispensation and creating a sense of safety and security amongst Ghanaians that were your rights to be flouted and abused by an institution or individual, that you could actually make a complaint. So by keeping Azugu and co in office, that is actually a direct slap in the face of Ghanaians as a whole, because the opprobrium around the developments in Ayawaso was not by a section of Ghanaians. All Ghanaians were worried that we cannot have these reversals of brutalities by state agencies who were running amok without any control and supervision. And I'm hoping that this statement, and I think Sampson's point, that this goes beyond only journalists. I mean, military people have been brutalized, other uniformed officers brutalized, other Ghanaians in other professions brutalized and threatened. So this is a national issue that we need to have a presidential commission, which I support, to look at the type and form of security operatives that we want. What is our national security policy? What is the national interest within which the security policy must be located? And how must that national security stroke national interest be protected to ensure that every Ghanaian is free, safe, secure to go about his or her responsibilities?
Yeah, Prof. So let us quickly come back to the officers at the heart of this. And in that statement, we are told that the Lieutenant Colonel, has to report to the CDS for further investigation. Give us a sense of how these kind of investigations happen in the military.
Well, I mean, I think in the military there will be some convening order will be issued, and there are different forms of commissions of inquiry. The most serious of which will be a court martial, which I doubt very much that this would be so. My suspicion is that it will be an internal administrative inquiry of sorts. There will be a little slap on his wrist, and then that will be the end of it. And therein lies the danger. The public must be given a clear signal and indication that whatever actions this individual or these individuals took that has made the minister to ask for their withdrawal back to their parent institutions must be made public to such an extent that people are then comfortable and are happy and feel very secure. A quiet administrative investigation in which we don't know the results will not inure to the benefit of this country.
Prof, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm told the military has a zero tolerance policy for officers who abuse or assault civilians. I've actually heard of a senior officer who was expelled from the military because he slapped a woman who walked on a certain portion of a barracks that was not meant to be walked on.
Well, the military has zero tolerance. How it is applied is related to the particular, circumstance, the individual involved. So yes, on paper there's a zero, tolerance for these abuses. But I can say with all confidence that we have improved over time in terms of civil-military relations. What is happening under national security is an aberration and a reversal of the successes that we have achieved since 1992.
Sampson, so what does this mean for press freedom? You admit that this is not enough, but at least it's a step in the right direction. Tell us what you think.
The assurance you have in the concluding part is reassuring, and I suspect it is definitely deliberate. So we will take the minister by his word, and some of us I'm sure most of us know, Kandapa, that the things that are happening at, national security are contrary to what we know him to be. The sort of consummate professional that we have known him to be, demanding accountability, empowering us with, information on how to unearth corruption, financial malpractices and all. So it's reassuring, but like I said earlier, we need to do a lot more. We don't have to take our eyes off the ball. Joy SMS, and I have followed the whole week, has dedicated its programming to questioning the above the law attitude and approach at the national security by the national security operatives. So I'm back to what is more lasting and what will be more enduring and comprehensive. We go to a constitutional commission of inquiry with a presidential undertaking ahead of it that it will not vary the report or the recommendation, and that it will implement it without variation, and that it will not be limited to only national security, but former BNI, which is now NIB, and we can also vouch that IOCO, which used to have some of these tendencies, because of a new leader headship, a new leader, DCOP Edupoku, that place has transformed. What it means is that leadership can change things. So we should extend that commission's work to not only national security, but the NIB, and to allow the general public to come forward and to share, and then we'll deal with it from that perspective. But in the meantime, let us see the report. This is only a statement on the back of the report. Let us see the report and the details of how exactly Caleb was treated.
Sampson, finally, are we safe to say, though not admitted in there, that the action based on the report suggests that some form of assault actually took place?
Oh, that's very clear on the face of it. There's a clear admission. And for anybody who had any doubt, all the doubting Thomases, some of whom were doubting deliberately, mischievously, some of whom were doing it purely for their very useless political propaganda, this is the first start. Confirmation from the ministry itself that Caleb was assaulted, he was manhandled, he was tortured. They just needed to use those words rather than say inappropriate and say there was a breach of convention or conventional operating procedure. That's not it. So this is a clear thing. I have told you before that this was witnessed. People saw it. People witnessed it. So you can't run away from this. If anything at all, they have leaked a part of what Caleb was videoing. They should leak the CCTV of what was going on when he was handcuffed, he was kneeling down, and they were beating him.
I appreciate your time this morning, really. Sampson Ladi Ayenene is a lawyer sharing his perspective on that statement released by the National Security Ministry. And in this conversation, though, Prof. Enin, your final words on the way forward, really. So this is not just another talk shop like we saw with the Ayawaso West Fulgan situation, and we see real results and changes within our security space.
Gives a clear impression that civil society action does have an impact. So there's got to be an engagement. We have a minister who is tolerant, who listens, who seeks to engage, and I think we need to continue to engage him, provide specific ideas on the table with respect to procedures about recruitment, standard operating procedures, training, mentoring, and more importantly, oversight. This is a whole of nation stroke, whole of society approach. We just need to continue the engagement. This is going to be long, but it's going to be useful, and hopefully by the end of the day, Ghana is going to be the winner.
Grateful for your time this morning. That's Professor Kwesi Enin, and he's a security expert, giving us details also and sharing his thoughts on the statement we just received early this morning from the National Security Ministry. You're watching News Desk with me, Bernice Abubedulan.